As the garage door creaked open, Marcus adjusted his tie, casting one final glance in the mirror. The reflection that stared back at him was calm, deliberate, everything he needed to be tonight. He descended the stairs slowly, savoring each step, knowing that the moment he reached the bottom, everything would change. There she stood, Emma at the base of the stairs, her face twisted with curiosity. "What's with the suit?" she asked, taking in his crisp, formal appearance. "I've got plans." "Plans? We aren't going anywhere, so what's going on?" Her confusion was evident. "I've got a date," Marcus replied, his voice steady. He continued walking toward the door, his shoes clicking on the hardwood floor with purpose. Emma's face morphed from confusion to anger. "A date? With who? What the hell, Marcus?" But by then, he was already halfway out the door, slamming it behind him. He smiled as he heard her frustrated screams echo through the house. She might have been quick on her feet, but not quick enough to catch him this time. He knew she'd follow him, her fury driving her mad. He knew she wouldn't understand. Yet. But she would. Soon. The Silverado rumbled to life, and Marcus sped off into the night, leaving behind a stunned and furious wife. As the tires screeched against the asphalt, Marcus let out a low, bitter chuckle. This was only the beginning. It hadn't always been this way. Marcus had been madly in love with Emma the moment he met her. They'd crossed paths at a business conference 5 years ago. She was charming, intelligent, and had an air of confidence that Marcus found irresistible. At that time, everything about her felt perfect. They quickly fell in love and married within a year. But after 7 years of marriage, things had changed. It started subtly. Her late nights at work, the secretive texts, the sly smiles when her phone buzzed. Marcus ignored the signs for as long as he could, not wanting to admit that Emma was drifting away. But the truth became impossible to ignore when one of Marcus's friends, Trevor, spotted her at a bar, laughing and drinking with another man, someone Marcus didn't know. When he confronted Emma, she brushed it off. "Oh, that's just Dominic, a work friend. It's nothing. You're being paranoid." But Marcus wasn't stupid. He knew when something was off. One evening after Emma had come home unusually late, Marcus decided to investigate further. He checked her phone when she wasn't around, scrolling through messages and emails. That's when he found it, the confirmation he'd been dreading. She was seeing Dominic, and it was more than just drinks. She had saved his name in her contacts as Deborah, a weak attempt to hide the affair. The texts made Marcus's blood boil. Emma had written things that cut deeper than a blade. "One man can't fulfill my needs. I want more. I've tasted him, and now I crave more. He makes me feel alive in a way Marcus never could." Every word ignited a fire in Marcus, but he didn't confront her right away. No, Marcus had a different plan in mind, a cruel, calculated plan. He wasn't going to storm out in a fit of rage or beg her to stay faithful. Instead, he would bide his time, watch her, and when the moment was right, he would make her regret everything. Marcus began his silent campaign. He tracked Emma's movements, learned about her secret meetings with Dominic, and gathered evidence. As much as it tore him apart, he played the role of the oblivious husband while planning his revenge meticulously. He knew that simply leaving her wasn't enough. She needed to feel what he felt, helpless, betrayed, torn apart by the very person she trusted. And so, the date tonight wasn't just any date. It was the beginning of the end. Her end. Emma stormed into the living room, pacing back and forth. She had tried calling Marcus several times, but he wasn't answering. What did he mean he had a date? Since when did he start going out? And with who? Her mind raced with possibilities, but deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. This wasn't like Marcus. He was always predictable, reliable, and safe. The thought of him out with another woman infuriated her. But there was also a nagging sense of dread, as if the ground was shifting beneath her feet. While Emma simmered in anger, Marcus arrived at his date destination, a high-end restaurant where Emma's co-workers often frequented. He wasn't here for dinner, though. Instead, he met with Victoria, a private investigator he had hired weeks ago to follow Emma and Dominic. She handed him a thick folder full of incriminating photos. Emma and Dominic laughing over drinks, sneaking kisses in parking lots, and entering hotels together. But tonight wasn't about those photos. They were just insurance. Tonight was about flipping the script on Emma's betrayal. When Marcus finally returned home in the early hours of the morning, he found Emma sitting on the couch, arms crossed, a mixture of anger and worry etched on her face. "Where the hell have you been?" she demanded, standing as soon as he walked through the door. "You think you can just walk out and—" "Who said I was coming home?" Marcus replied coldly, cutting her off. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice faltering. "Just thought I'd give you a taste of your own medicine. You want to see other people, right? You said one man can't fulfill your needs. Well, maybe one woman can't fulfill mine." Her face drained of color. "What are you talking about, you—" "Dominic," Marcus said, his voice laced with venom. "You think I don't know?" Emma froze, her eyes widening. The room went still, the tension crackling in the air like electricity. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. "I've known for months," Marcus continued. "Every meeting, every lie. I've watched you sneak around with him, pretending to be something you're not. And you know what, Emma? You were right. One man can't fulfill you, because no man can ever trust you again." Emma tried to find words, but all she managed was a whisper. "Marcus, No," Marcus interrupted. "There's nothing left to say. This is over, but don't think I'm just walking away. You're going to pay for this." "Pay? What do you mean?" He smiled, a cold, calculated smile that made Emma's skin crawl. "You'll find out soon enough. You'll know exactly what it feels like to be betrayed by someone you trusted with your life." She took a step back, fear flickering in her eyes. "You wouldn't—" "Oh, but I would. And I will," Marcus replied. "This isn't just about revenge, Emma. It's about justice." Emma stared at him, trying to read his expression, but Marcus had already turned away. His calm demeanor made her heart race. She didn't know what he was planning, but it terrified her. Days passed, and Marcus continued his charade, acting as if everything was normal, while behind the scenes, he set his plan into motion. He made sure Emma saw him out with other women, just subtle enough to ignite her jealousy. He withdrew money from their joint accounts, started moving assets, and laid the groundwork for a divorce that would leave her with nothing. But the real cruelty lay in the emotional torment. He toyed with Emma, making her question everything: her sanity, her worth, her future. He would leave for days without explanation, drop hints that he was meeting someone new, and then come home and act as if nothing had happened. Emma's facade of confidence began to crumble. She grew more anxious, desperate to regain control. One evening, after weeks of this emotional warfare, Emma finally broke down. "Marcus, please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "We can fix this. I made a mistake, but I still love you. We can work through this." Marcus leaned in, his face inches from hers, and whispered, "You still don't get it, do you? This isn't about love anymore. This is about watching you suffer the way you made me suffer." Emma collapsed onto the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. But Marcus felt nothing. Her tears didn't move him. He had become numb to her pain, just as she had been numb to his. The woman he once adored was now just a shell of the person he thought he knew. The night dragged on, and Marcus stood by the window, looking out into the dark streets, feeling a hollow sense of satisfaction. Emma lay on the couch, exhausted from her tears, her breathing shallow and uneven. But for Marcus, this was just the beginning. "I told you, Emma," he muttered under his breath. "One day, You'll understand what it feels like. The end wasn't here yet. No, this was far from over. Emma had no idea just how deep Marcus's revenge ran. There were still things he hadn't revealed, secrets he hadn't shared, moves he hadn't made. And when the final blow came, it would shatter what little remained of Emma's life. But for now, Marcus would wait. After all, revenge was a dish best served cold. Days turned into weeks, and Marcus's web of deception tightened around Emma. She was no longer the confident, self-assured woman she once was. The cracks in her composure had deepened, and she was now living in a constant state of fear and paranoia. Every time the phone rang, every time Marcus left the house without explanation, she feared the worst. Her sleepless nights were spent staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with anxiety, wondering when the other shoe would drop. And Marcus enjoyed every second of it. His satisfaction wasn't just about revenge. It was about control. He reveled in the power he had over her, the way she flinched whenever he walked into the room, the desperation in her voice when she begged him to talk, to listen, to forgive. But forgiveness was never part of his plan. One evening, as Marcus prepared to leave for another one of his mysterious outings, Emma finally confronted him. She stood in the doorway, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes hollow from exhaustion. "Marcus, please," she whispered. "I'm begging you. I can't take this anymore. Just tell me what you want. I'll do anything." Marcus paused, his hand on the doorknob, and turned to face her. The sight of her, broken and defeated, should have stirred something in him, compassion, pity, maybe even regret. But there was nothing. He was empty inside, his heart hardened by months of planning and cold calculation. "What I want," Marcus said, his voice low and steady. "What I want is for you to understand what you've done. You destroyed us, Emma. You chose him over me. You betrayed me, and now you're paying the price." She shook her head, her voice trembling. "I know I made a mistake, but I still love you. Can't you see that? We can fix this. Please, Marcus, just tell me how." A cruel smile curled at the edges of his lips. "It's too late for that. You had your chance. Now it's my turn." He stepped closer, looming over her as she backed up against the wall, her breathing ragged with fear. "Tomorrow," he continued, his voice a chilling whisper, "you'll find out exactly how far I'm willing to go." With that, Marcus walked out the door, leaving Emma standing there, trembling and afraid. She watched the taillights of the Silverado disappear into the night, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know what he meant, but she knew it wasn't good. The next morning, Emma woke to a knock on the door. She opened it to find a man in a suit holding a large envelope. "Emma Dalton?" he asked. "Yes," she replied, her voice weak. "I'm here to serve you with these," the man said, handing her the envelope. "You've been officially served." Her hands shook as she took the envelope and ripped it open. Inside were divorce papers, papers that detailed the terms of their separation. But as Emma skimmed through the document, her eyes widened in horror. Marcus wasn't just divorcing her. He was taking everything as much as he can as per laws. The house, the savings, the investments, all of it. She was left with few only. And as she read further, she realized that Marcus had been planning this for months, moving assets into a trust name, closing accounts, and ensuring that when the dust settled, she would be left with nothing but the clothes on her back. Emma's knees buckled, and she sank to the floor, clutching the papers in her hands. Tears streamed down her face as the reality of her situation sank in. Marcus had outmaneuvered her at every turn. She had thought she could control the affair, keep her life with Dominic separate from her marriage, but now she saw the truth. Marcus had been playing a long game, and she had been too blind to see it. With a shaky hand, she reached for her phone and dialed Marcus's number. It rang several times before he finally answered. "You got the papers, I see," Marcus said, his voice cold and detached. "Marcus, please," she sobbed. "You can't do this to me. I have nothing. You can't just leave me like this." "Oh, but I can," he replied, his tone icy. "You see, Emma, this is what happens when you betray someone who trusted you. You wanted more? Well, now you have less than nothing." Emma's sobs grew louder, but Marcus remained unmoved. "Enjoy your new life, Emma," he said before hanging up the phone. Emma stared at the screen, her tears blurring the words, "Call ended." She was alone, broken, and destitute, the weight of her decisions crashing down around her. For Marcus, the victory was bittersweet. As he sat in his new apartment, a glass of whiskey in hand, he reflected on everything that had transpired. Emma had been the love of his life once, but now she was nothing more than a painful memory. The woman he had married was gone, replaced by someone he no longer recognized. He had thought that by destroying her, he would find some sense of closure, some relief from the agony of her betrayal. But as he stared out at the city skyline, he realized that the emptiness inside him remained. Revenge had consumed him, and now, with Emma's life in ruins, there was nothing left for him to focus on. The victory felt hollow, like a triumph won at the cost of his own soul. The next few weeks were quiet. Emma had disappeared from his life entirely, and Marcus found himself with more time than he knew what to do with. The thrill of revenge had worn off, and now he was left with only his thoughts and the crushing loneliness that came with them. One evening, as Marcus sat in the darkened apartment, his phone buzzed. It was a text message from Trevor, the friend who had first spotted Emma with Dominic. "Hey man, heard about the divorce. You doing okay?" Marcus stared at the message for a long time before replying. "I'm fine. Just needed to get rid of the dead weight." But as he hit send, Marcus realized that it wasn't true. The weight of everything, the betrayal, the revenge, the destruction, still hung heavy around his neck. Months passed, and Marcus's life continued in a strange, detached routine. He went to work, came home, and spent his evenings in silence. He had cut off all contact with Emma, but every now and then he would hear rumors, whispers about how she was struggling to get by, how Dominic had left her shortly after everything came crashing down. She was alone now, just like Marcus. But Marcus didn't feel the satisfaction he thought he would. In the end, his revenge hadn't given him the peace he had sought. It had only left him feeling more isolated, more disconnected from the person he used to be. One night, as he sat on the balcony of his apartment, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, Marcus sighed. The price of revenge, he realized, had been far steeper than he had anticipated. He had lost more than just a wife. He had lost a part of himself. And as the cool night air washed over him, Marcus couldn't help but wonder if, in trying to destroy Emma, he had ended up destroying himself.